we been talking about? Y'all can hear me? Huh? Just passing through? What does that mean, just passing through? Huh? Y'all had time to think about it? Temporary? Do you live as if it's temporary? As if it's temporary? Are you living that way? Or are you living as if it's permanent? This is where you're going to be for a long time. Now, what we were talking about submission. If you were here last week, you heard John talk, right? Everybody heard John speak last week, right? How many of y'all said in your mind, he crazy? There's no way you could have did what he went through. Anybody? Take all that abuse from a manager or boss, just over and over again, and just he submit. I did. I said he was crazy. Which, again, if you're not in this world, you are crazy. So what he did was very crazy when you think about it from the worldly perspective. Because most people won't take that kind of abuse from anyone. No matter who it is, they won't take that kind of abuse from anyone. We're taught that. We're taught that we're all equal. We're taught that we all have something to say. We're taught that we all have rights. But that's not what Christ has been teaching us. Christ has been teaching us that we're in God. So Pastor Johnny said that last week was a very tough message. For anybody who's been with UICC before, have you guys ever talked about 1 Peter 2 and 3? Anybody remember that? Huh? Nobody remembers that? No one? I don't. I don't remember. Anybody remember it from a long time ago? We ever talked about 1 Peter 3? I know we went over it in some Bible studies, but I don't think we went over it in a sermon. I can't remember. A lot of places don't go over 1 Peter 2, 1 Peter just passing through, because that's not how the world sees us. Pastor John is right. It's a very tough lesson to tell somebody to submit in everything they do, because we're not used to that. We're used to equality. We're used to somebody, I have my rights. I have the things I want to say. But that wasn't the toughest lesson last week. This probably is the toughest lesson this week. We're going to be talking about 1 Peter 3. And 1 Peter 3 is very, very unique. Now, it said living as foreigners in the land entails what? When we say living as foreigners, what are we looking at? What does that mean, living as foreigners? Like, I know if you went to Germany, when I used to travel a lot and I would go to Germany, do you know if you were a foreigner in Germany, you knew you were a foreigner in Germany? They spoke no English, none. The teller machines were all in German. The TV was all in German. They didn't care about no English. Even if they were translating in English, they were speaking in German just as loud. Like I'm talking to you, there would be somebody here speaking in German just as loud. So you would not even be able to hear the English. So you knew you were a foreigner in that land. Do we know we're foreigners in this land? And when we talk about submission, why do we submit? Anybody? Interactive Church. Why do we submit? Anybody? Huh? What does it say in 1 Peter 2? If we go back to 1 Peter 2, submit yourselves for what? For the Lord's sake. So anytime we submit, we're submitting for the Lord's sake. That's the only reason we're doing it, for God. Not for me. I'm not submitting for me because I want something. I'm submitting for the Lord's sake. I'm not doing it to get any accolades. I'm doing it because that's what God commanded. He not only commanded it, but he lived it throughout his life as he walked on this earth. He submitted to all the authorities that was on this earth. He didn't cause any trouble. He didn't cause any protest. He went peacefully when they arrested him. He totally submitted for the Lord's sake because he was submitting unto the Father. But we live in a world and society that says you're weak if you do that. That you're not a man or you're not a woman if you do those kind of things. If you follow under someone so closely and do everything they say and submit to their word and submit to everything, it means you're weak. You're spineless as a man. You don't have a spine of your own. You don't think as a man. And as a woman, you're not a new age thinking woman. This is what we're being bombarded with in today's life. So What's next after we submitting for the Lord's sake? What's next after we submit it to our employer? What's next after we submit it out there in the open? The home. How do we submit in the home? Now here's the part that's tough. Everybody know what I'm about to say, right? Here's the part that where it gets like, is there a new meaning to this? So we're called to live as strangers in our house. Why? Because every household operates a set way. Agreed? If you talk to people at work, you'll hear them say, oh, well, I don't do this in the house. Why not? Well, this person does this, or this person does this. And usually when you talk to a lot of women, it's like, well, my husband's going to do all of this, or my husband's going to do all of that. Or certain husband says, my wife does this, or my wife does that. There's an order of things, and God has placed that order upon us, and we must live out that order of things, no matter how we feel about it. And submission is one that we don't like to live out. Here's the question. If you can't submit here on earth to anything or anyone, why would you submit to God in heaven? Remember, there were already beings in heaven, and they failed to submit to God. So what determines whether or not you're going to submit to God? Where do we draw the line at? If I don't submit to my boss, if I don't submit to authorities here on earth, then why would I submit to God? That's the question. Because if I can question everything here on earth, why can't I question things in heaven? That's my mindset. So submission is without question. And ordinarily, we question everything. We're taught that. Question this, question that. Don't just do anything blindlessly. Where God is telling us to submit. Never go against God. Pastor Johnny talked about that last week. Never go against God in that submission. But still, we're told to submit. We're told to submit to authorities. Now we're told something very unique. 1 Peter 3, verse 1. Wives. Now this right now is going not just to wives, but it says wives. But think about if you're not married right now. Think about if you're going to get married. Wives, in the same way, submit yourselves to your own husbands, so that if any of them do not believe the word, they may be won over without words by the behavior of their wives. Whoa. Wives. Now, standing over here, you get everybody on the podium saying, wives, you're equal. You don't have to submit to no man. As a matter of fact, standing over here, they say, you don't even need a man. You can get a job, you can make your money, you can do everything by yourself. That's living in the world. But standing over here, God is saying, wives, in the same way. In what way? Here's the key. When it says in the same way, remember we always say go back in Scripture, we just went over it. So if he's saying in the same way, he's saying in the same way of what Pastor Johnny taught last week, by submitting to authority. That of the authority in the world, by submitting to the rulers and the principalities of this world, the governors, the police, everybody. So the same way we submit to them, wives now have to submit to their husbands in the household. God has deemed this. Proper submission in the home follows the same principle of submission towards government, towards employers, towards everything like that. Not only of our actions, here's the key, but of our heart. Because if you don't have the heart, you're not going to submit. And we should have a Christ-like heart. Without a Christ-like heart, there is no submission. We can sit here all day long, we can be in this building all day long, and we can raise our hands and praise God. But if our heart is not Christ-like, if we don't have the love of Christ in our heart, we're not going to submit. For those that are not married who may want to get married, are you willing to submit to your husband wholeheartedly without the world telling you it's wrong? The wives who are married, are you submitting to your husband as God said submit to your husband? Or is everything in the household equal? Which is it? Do I submit, or is everything in the household equal? I tell you, it may be both. Not equal in the way the world says equal, because here's how the world says equal. The world says we're 50-50. That me and my wife are 50-50. Everything is split right down the middle. We are what? A team. How many people feel their relationship is a team? I don't feel my relationship is a team. It's not. It's what the world has been telling me and everyone else. Your relationship is a team. Why is my relationship not a team? What is the biggest thing when we go to work and we start doing this teaming thing and you get this one person who says I all the time? What do everybody say? There's no what? There's no I in team, right? So what does it take to make a team? If I say I'm coming to this church and I'm bringing my team, what does that tell you? Even if I don't tell you how many, if I don't tell you anything, it does signify one thing. I'm coming with more than one, right? Because he's coming and he's bringing his team. So let me ask you a question. If we are a team, if me and my wife are a team, what did God say about the husband? What did he say about the husband? What will the husband do? Huh? No, not that. God said that the husband will do what? He will leave his mother and father, and he will do what? And take a what? A wife, and they will become what? How can you get a team out of one? You can't. God made us one together. There's no way you can ever get a team out of one. When it's one person does the work, one, which means we do the work together, which means everything happens as one, not as a team. Because guess what? If it's a team, then everybody's got rights. And if it's a team, if I say, whoa, we're at this intersection, what are you going to do? She says go left. I say go right. We're a team. There's no authority, so what do we do? Unless she concedes and says, no, let's go right like you, or I concede and say, no, let's go left, we're still going to be a team, we're still going to be separated, but we're never going to move again. Because we have no agreement. There is no order. There is no set, okay, well, yours takes precedent over mine. Why? Because we're living solely as a team. Every decision we make is made as a team. And as a team, you're always going to have people that's going to disagree. Always. So God has put a set order in. So one, as couples, as married couples, wives, we're one, you are one with your husbands. Husbands are one with the wives. There is no such thing as a team. The world may look at it as a team. Why? Because you can divide a team. In football, you play defense, you play offense. Basketball, you're the center, you're the forward. All these teams can be divided in certain aspects. In a team, you have certain responsibilities. If husband and wife are a team and not what God says, then what's your duties as a team versus what's my duties as a team? That's how we split it up. Here's what you're supposed to do, and that's the way life does it, right? The women do what? Cooking, cleaning, housework. The men do what? Change the oil in the car, grass, outside work. Why? Because it's supposed to be for the man to be outside. Whenever my wife would tell me we're a team, I go, okay, it's your turn to go change the oil in the car. And oh, by the way, it's snowing outside. What would she say to me? Think what she would say to me. That's man's work. I can't do that. So should I equally say, I can't do the dishes today? Because what? That's woman's work. I can't go downstairs and get the clothes. Why? Because that's woman's work. See what happens when you live as a team? You start to divide everything. And once you divide everything, you can't put it back together until you come together as one. Husband and wives are together as one. And God said, wives, submit in the same way, submit to your husbands, to your own husband. Let me make that clear. To your own husbands, so that any of them do not believe the word, they may be won over without words by the behavior of their wives. Now, think about this. The reason people can't submit and wives can't submit in the home, why? Because they think that means submit to every man. He didn't say submit to every man. Peter said submit to your own husbands. That's not the ordained structure for the world as it is for the Christian home. In the Christian home, it's wives submit to your husbands. In the same way that I was talking about of submitting to authority previously in chapter 2, I'm saying wives now submit to your own husbands. Not wives submit to every man out there. Hey, you, come with me. Well, honey, I got to go. Why? Because he said I've got to go here. And you said I got to submit. No, not to any man in the world, but to your own husbands. So there's order within the house. So yeah, when men say, oh, women ain't supposed to do this or be that, remember God had judges that was a woman, Deborah, who judged over Israel. So it's not the structure for the world. The world has its own structure, but it is the structure for the Christian home. And when we bring the world into the Christian home, we're not looking to follow God. We're not looking for our hearts to be where God is. We have to live as strangers in this world. Remember this, Christ didn't retaliate at all when they hurled names and insults at him. He did what? He submitted. Now, that doesn't say, wives, in the same way, submit yourselves to your own husbands. If he is handsome like Kevin Bingham is, don't say that. If he's got a nice motorcycle like Tim is, doesn't say that. If he's making a lot of money, like all of y'all are, doesn't say that. What does it say? In the same way, submit to your own husbands. That's it. But we perceive it to be that it says, wives, submit to your husbands if he's caring for you in the right way. Because if he's not caring for you in the right way, you have the obligation never to submit to him. And you're now your own woman. I read none of that in there. So, if my wife is submitting to me, but I am not a godly husband, and I'm not treating her with respect, what is she supposed to do? Walk out the door? Leave me? If she went to 80% of her friends in the world, guess what they tell her to do? Leave them. If she went to 80% of you guys in here, what would you tell her to do? Just say she came to you and said, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, and he just doesn't respect me. He's always getting mad, he's always yelling, he's always doing this. What would you tell her to do? Would you tell her that you deserve to be happy? Maybe you need to find somebody else? Because none of this is scripture. Or would somebody here say, well, it doesn't matter how he's living, you have to submit yourself to him? How many people would really say that to a woman who came to you and said they're in a bad relationship and their husband don't care about it? And you know they're coming to church as a woman, would you say they deserve to be happy? Would you try to fix them up with somebody else? Would you say it's time for them to get a divorce? We can't. And here's why. So that if any of them do not believe the word, they may be won over without the words by the behavior of their wives. Now, this is very unique how he says this. Your submission to husbands as wives is not a reward. You don't get a reward for it. Not here. It's just what you're commanded to do. So your submission, my wife's submission to me, is not a reward for my good behavior towards her. So because I'm nice to her and I'm buying her rings and Pandora bracelets and all kind of stuff, that's not for her to be submissive to me. But we often find that that's what happens in relationships. The nicer the husband is, the more submissive the wife is. Why? Because she wants those rewards. If she stops being nice, what's the husband going to stop doing? Being nice. That's how the world rotates. She should be submissive no matter what my reaction is, because it's not a reward. Peter carefully said, just again, like I said, to your own husbands, not to all men, but to your own husbands. So while there must be a servant-like love and attitude on the part of those in position of authority, in this case, the men, that does not eliminate the concept of God's order of authority and corresponding submission. So even though I'm supposed to be loving, I may not be. The way Peter's talking to, remember, in the early church, when Christianity came about, everybody was what? Judaism or pagan. You were either Jew or Greek or Gentile. So everybody was Judaism. And in the world, women always submitted under the authority of all men. even within the public. So now what do you have? You have Christianity being preached. You have women listening to this about Christ, women coming to know Christ, while the men are what? At home, at work, resting, but they're not coming to know Christ. So at this time, you've got women saying, hey, whoa, I know Christ, now I'm a Christian. I am far better than you because you don't know Christ as a husband. So now I should be the one running the household because you have yet to come to Christ. So they were coming with questions to a lot of leaders like, am I supposed to leave my husband? Because guess what? He don't know Christ now. What am I going to do now? Because as a woman, I'm supposed to follow my husband. And I'll tell you, everywhere in the world, except here, and maybe Britain or Australia, but the westernized countries, whatever the religion of the man is the religion of the wife. In the Middle East, you are a Muslim. If you marry a Muslim man today, guess what? No matter what he tells you here in this country, when he takes you home, you will be Muslim. And the kids will be under his control. So if you ever divorce him, those kids will remain with him because the man gets everything. So what Peter's preaching is totally against everything that the world has been preaching. He's telling them, no, you're not to stay with them. You're not to leave them. You are to stay with them. Why? So that your actions as a submissive wife may win them over. Now, why is that crucial in our society? Why is that crucial in our life? Think about this. Submission is clearly throughout the Bible in a lot of aspects. I want to get my timer up so I don't make sure I don't run over time. Submission is clearly in the Bible through a lot of aspects. Jesus submitted to his parents, Luke 2:51. After he was at the temple, they went with him. He did everything they said. After he said, shouldn't I be at my father's house? After they found him, after that, he was with them and everything. Demons submitted to disciples, Luke 10:17. We learned about citizens submitting to the government in 1 Peter 2:13. It's in Romans and it's in Titus. So this submission to the government is not just something Peter was talking one time and let it go. It's also in Romans 13:1 and in Titus 3:1. So it's all through Scripture that we submit to authorities. The universe will submit to Jesus. We see that in 1 Corinthians. Unseen spiritual beings submitted to Jesus Christ. We saw that numerous times. Here's the one where it may or may not get shaky in submission. Christians should submit to their church leaders. It's in 1 Corinthians 16:15 and 1 Peter 5:5. We'll go over that as we go down. Yes, and there's reason for that. I'll talk about that later on. Again, wives submitting to the husband, the church submitting to Jesus. So as a whole, we submit to Jesus. Servants should submit to their masters, and Christians, of course, should submit to God. Now, Peter brings up something very interesting here. Do not obey the word about the man. Refers to an unbelieving husband, somebody who truly doesn't believe. So as a wife, what would you tell your husband who didn't believe and now you have to submit to him? First of all, you ain't got to raise your hands, but would you be able to do that? I know a lot of people within us, their husbands come to church or their husbands know God, so it's a lot easier to submit to somebody who knows God. Or really, is it easier to submit to somebody who knows God? It's not. Because submission is not something we like to do easily. We like to be in charge. I don't like to submit to nobody. I don't like to be pushed around. And we think submission is part of being pushed around. Submission is not being pushed around. Guess what submission is? Submission is love. And love is at the core of everything we talk about and everything we do because love is Christ. That's why he submitted. So if you have love in your hearts, one, as women, you will submit to your husbands. You will do what it says here. Us as a group, as a church, will submit to God. And whatever he tells us to do, be that through Pastor Johnny, be that through the Spirit, through the rest of us, we will submit. We won't deny it. How many times have we not submitted to God by saying, I know they need me to go here with the church, but I'm very busy over here? Is that submission? It's not. That's the way we should live our lives wholeheartedly. Here's the reason why it says obey those who don't obey. How to put this? All right, two girls talking. So, how is he? Well, he's nice. Is he a Christian? No, but I can change that. But I love him. But he's not a Christian. Yeah, but I'll change that. Really. That's what we perceive. Wives may want to shape their husbands, either guiding them to Jesus or guiding them to Jesus through their words. Peter reminds them that God's plan is that wives impact their husbands not through persuasive lectures, but through godly submission. So wives, it's not anything you tell the husband about coming to know Christ. It's not you running out of here and preaching the gospel to them at home and letting them know everything that was just said here. That's fine. But it's through your godly actions that an unbelieving husband will come to follow Christ. And even the believing husband that may not be fully believing may come to more follow Christ. Why? Because of your godly ways. Because of the love that's in your heart of being submissive. Not being crazy, not being, a slave, but actually being submissive. And in this case, submissive is one under authority of, one taking orders from. Sort of like a soldier is submissive to their rank. They're those that are over them in rank. There is a sense that in which a wife's effort to shape her husband through her own words and efforts may do what? It may hinder the power of God. Because if I'm thinking like the world, and if I'm not sitting in here as a husband, then I am thinking like the world. And then my wife comes home and starts preaching the gospel to me, thinking that's going to change me. I'm already thinking like the world. And I'm already thinking there is nothing she can tell me. Why? Because she's a woman. And I'm the man. And if I don't know it, how does she know it? Now she's already showing me that she's above me. And once you do that, what am I going to do? I'm going to shut down. As a man, I'm going to shut down. Why? Because you're not above me. I'm the man of the house. You're not. But what do we tell ourselves? Women, we go out and we get educated. Men get educated, but women get educated and they say, okay, I'm just as good as you. I am just as good as you. Yes, to God we are, but to the world, we're not. So if I didn't obey and my wife kept coming at me with all this scripture, that's going to hinder God's word in my life. Because I'm already thinking I'm above her. I'm already thinking I'm over her. But how she will win me over is by her godly actions, by her trust in the Lord. When I see her trust in the Lord, that's going to do something in my inner side that's going to say, wait a minute, this God she's following may be the right God. That may be the guide for me. It shouldn't be with our words, women. The attractiveness of a wife's submissive behavior, even to an unbelieving husband, suggests that God has inscribed a righteous and beauty role, distinctions to include male leadership or headship in the family, and female acceptance and responsiveness to that leadership. The unbelieving husband sees this behavior and deep within perceives the beauty of it. Within his heart, there is a witness that is right. This is how God intended men and women to relate as husband and wife. He concludes, therefore, that the gospel which his wife believes must be true. That's a guy named Wayne Grudem. Sounds really good. He's a theologian. But that's how transformation starts with the husband. It starts with a submissive wife. So if your husband is not following God altogether, your words are not going to change him. Being submissive is what's going to change him, because it takes God to change us. Also, as we look at this, women, and that's a big one. How many people got makeup on today? How many people woke up and put on makeup? Nobody wears makeup? Huh? Everybody scared to say they put on makeup because you think I'm going to bust you out or say you're sinning and you're going to go, I'm not, I would never do that. I just want to take a survey. Where's your beauty come from? Huh? Now we can give the Christian response right now. Oh, it comes from the inside. What are you talking about? It's the inner beauty. Right. Huh? Okay, there you go. Now, let's see what the scripture says here. After it says, wives, submit. And it says, when they see the purity and reverence of your lives, your beauty should not come from an outward adornment, such as braided hair, and the wearing of gold jewelry, and fine clothes. Think about that. Outside adornment. That submissiveness is your beauty. Shouldn't come from the outside. It shouldn't come from makeup, gold earrings, all this kind of stuff. Husbands, we're about to save a lot of money after this sermon right here. All right, we're about to save big time after this sermon. Huh? Look here. It says, rather let it be hidden, let it be the hidden person of the heart. But for those women who really think that makeup is all of that you have to have it when you go out, you don't. Does Peter say don't wear makeup? No. Does he say don't make yourself up? No. We know Esther was a beautiful woman. So beautiful she won a beauty contest, became the queen, saved Israel through her beauty. They had to go through what? Treatment for about 2 years before they could even be presented to the king. Coconut oil baths, guacamole on the face, the whole 9 yards they had to go through before they even seen him. So the beauty is, doing this is not the sin. The sin is saying, I'm not going out there without my makeup on. The sin is saying, I don't want you to see me without my makeup. This is a true story about makeup, and you can Google it. Overseas, they don't get married like we get married here. They don't date somebody for 5-6 years and then get married. Their parents actually arranged the marriage. And I've seen where even the brother stood in for the one brother. He never even saw his wife. His brother stood in for him, got married, and then he met his wife later on. And they're still married today, literally. But an Indian couple got married. And I know some of you probably heard of this because this is really wild. And, of course, the wife looked beautiful. They got married. When they went home, she took the makeup off. The guy's actually suing her. He don't want to be married to her no more because she looks totally nothing like she looked with makeup on. Totally nothing like that. And he wants a divorce, and he is literally suing them, suing the family because they misrepresented themselves by having all the makeup on and made their daughter out to be very, very beautiful, when even as the Bible speaks of Leah, she wasn't easy on the eyes, I guess. And now he wants a divorce. But look what makeup does. Makeup covers up your inner beauty. Makeup covers up the submission. Because other than that, why do you have makeup on? Because it makes you look beautiful. Without it, do you truly look beautiful? Yes, to your husband you do. Yes, to your family you do. Yes, to God, who is the one that is most important, you look very beautiful. But we don't allow our submissiveness and our submissiveness to God to allow us to say, okay, yeah, we are beautiful. We don't allow it. We want to adorn ourselves with makeup. And there's guys who use makeup and all this kind of stuff too. I've seen it. Who won't go out without a little eyeshadow and all this kind of, and their blush and all this kind of stuff on. These are not the things that we identify ourselves with as a Christian. We identify ourselves with God and pouring his love out through our submissive behavior to one another, but wives to husbands. And that comes with no prerequisite. That doesn't say if anything else happens, then you have to do this. That comes straight from God. He says, rather it should be that of the inner self, the unfading beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit, which is great worth in God's eyes. So who do you want to please? You want to please the people of the world? By them saying, wow, she's so beautiful? Or do you want to please God? By looking at your inside and saying you're beautiful. Because once you take it away from the inside and start putting it on the exterior, then your inside starts to rot. But if you say in your mind that you are beautiful without the outside adornment, then that's how God sees you. It's beautiful. There was a thing that I heard about a lady who was, I think me and Amy had talked about it one time, a lady who was about to die. And she prayed to God, said, Lord, I don't want to die. I got a lot left. I got a lot to do. It's okay. I'll let you live. She won the lottery. She went to the hospital. She got everything worked out. Paid a lot of money. Totally changed. Very beautiful lady coming out of the hospital. Seeing all the doctors. Walked in the street, got hit by a bus. Eventually got to heaven. Lord, I thought you said you were going to let me live. I didn't know that was you. Sorry. Don't change yourself. God sees your inside. All right? If you change everything out here, to look beautiful, then really are you truly beautiful on the inside? Because guess what? If your husbands are still with you now, then you're beautiful. And between the time you got married and now, you've had to have taken your makeup off once or twice. You've had to have been sick in the house once or twice. You've had to just walk around in the house with baggy stuff on once or twice. So if your husbands are still with you now, guess what? You're beautiful to them. And you're beautiful to God. That's all that matters. It can't be from the outward appearance. A gentle and quiet spirit, which is very precious in the sight of God. This is the character of true beauty. Character traits are not promoted for women by our culture, yet they are precious in God's sight. And look how it goes on. Go to the next one, Nico. For this is the way the holy women of the past who put their hope in God used to adorn themselves. They submitted themselves to their own husbands. Now he's going back. So you're saying, wait a minute, why should I do it? Now we're giving you examples of the women of the past. So if you want to know why should I be the first to submit, no one's ever done it. Yeah, people have done it. Sarah obeyed Abraham. Sarah called him Lord. How many of y'all look at your husbands and think that they're Lord? Not God, but you're under authority of your husbands. Today, they would look at Sarah and say, whoa, you're a stupid lady. Why are you submitting to a man and calling him Lord? And that conversation will pick up and run right out of control. Yeah, why are you doing it? Yeah, why are you doing it? But she did it, and through it, she was blessed. And you women are her daughters. So if she can do it, then why can't you do it? Because the world don't want you to do it. How many of y'all would call your husband's Lord if somebody was over? Say you had your girlfriends over from work or something like that. And all of a sudden your husband said, hey, can you get me a cup of water? Yes, Lord. And you go, huh? Said, come on, really? So it was funny for Sarah to do it. How many of y'all would do that? This is what God is calling us to do. This is unorthodox. This is passing through. And then what would you say when she said, why are you doing that? Here's the normal response. Oh, he does so much for the family. He's very loving. He's this, he's that, he's this. Why? Because now I have to have a reason to submit to my husband. So we make ourselves a reason. I'll submit if he does all of these things. If he lives the way I want him to live, be the husband that I want him to be, I'll submit. It's not what God is saying. Just like the case of John when he stood up here and talked. He wasn't supposed to submit if the boss said, okay, it's 2 o'clock, you can go and take off. I know you got to be with your family. He was submitted even when the boss said, you can't go home. Even if he had to go home and be somewhere, he's got to call home and say, I can't be there. Total submission. None of us want to do it. I keep asking, if we don't want to do it here, how are we going to do it in heaven? How are we going to submit to God in heaven? Or will he say something or tell us to do something we don't want to do? For instance, everybody's around the throne worshiping. I just don't feel like worshiping now. So I'm allowed in heaven just to go do what I want to do without being submissive to God and his authority? Because his authority said this right here. Sarah obeyed 2 things she did. Remember when Abraham said, tell them you're my sister? Why? Why did she do that? Because she was submissive to him. Fast forward to now. Watch this. What's that? Huh? What does that mean? Watch this. We get ready to go in the club, me and Amy. Tell them you my sister. You better put that ring back on. I'm not your sister. I'm your wife, and everybody gonna know I'm your wife. I don't want to hear that. You better, really? Is that a submissive behavior? Every wife in here would say the same thing. If that husband pulled that ring off, you would lose your mind. Oh, you don't want nobody to know we married together now. He did the same thing. He said, tell me my sister. What did she do? I'm his sister. Total submissive. When God said leave, what did he do? If your husbands walk home today and say, honey, I was praying to God, and he told me just leave. Pack up and leave. How many of y'all would pack up and leave? The first why? Why we gotta leave? Why? And then it be second guessing God. Are you sure it was God talking to you? Because he didn't tell me anything about leaving. They're giving us an example of Sarah, how she was very submissive. In every aspect of her life, she was submissive to God. Yeah, did she stumble? Yeah, she laughed at God when he said he could do something. But all in all, she was submissive to her husband, to include leaving the land that they were in to go into a land that wasn't their own, that they didn't know where they were going at. Imagine getting in the car with your husband, y'all just driving because God said go. And, honey, where are we going? I don't know. God said for me to go. I think I'm going to get on 80 and we'll see where that takes us. Really, how many women would really fall for that today and follow their husband? God is telling you as women, you have to submit to your husbands no matter what, because that's submitting to his authority, the authority God put in. The husband is the head of the household. God is the head of the church. We submit to the church as a group. The church submits to God. Now, husbands, let's talk to you for a minute. That's a small, out of everything, if you look in the Bible, the women had about this much. And the husbands got about this much. So who's more important now, the women or the husband? Let's see. Husbands, in the same way, be considerate as you live with your wives, and treat them with respect as the weaker partner and as heirs with you of the gracious gift of life, so that nothing will hinder your prayers. There's a lot in that little bitty verse right there about now the husbands, how we're supposed to act. So not just husbands, but even unmarried guys. Because eventually you're going to be a husband if you choose to take a wife. So just as I said for unmarried young ladies and unmarried women, are you willing to submit to the guy you think you're going to marry or the guy you say you're going to marry? Are you willing to submit to him? If not, then you're not following Christ. Husbands, it says, in the same way, be considerate as you live with your wives. The King James Version says dwell. And when it says dwell with them, it's not meaning in the same household. It's meaning as one. A godly husband lives with his wife. He doesn't merely share a house, but he truly lives with her. He recognized the great point of Paul's teaching on marriage in Ephesians 5, which says husbands ought to love their wives as they love their own body. He who loves his wife loves himself. The godly husband demonstrates the essential unity of oneness God established between husband and wife. That's the role of the husband, to demonstrate that unity of oneness with his wife in love, understanding, and care. Not as a response to her submissiveness, but as a call from God to love his wife as he loves himself. Now, what won't a husband do for himself? So if there's something he won't do for himself, he can say he won't do it for his wife. But anything that a husband would do for themselves, they should do for their wife. But we can't. Because if I iron for myself, why wouldn't I iron for my wife? If I iron for my wife, the rest of the guys in here can call me henpeck. That's a woman's job. Why are you ironing? Well, if the Bible says treat them with respect, why wouldn't I iron? Why wouldn't I do it? And it says with understanding. Here's the part that husbands, I guess because of society, have you ever heard that no one will ever understand a woman? Just can't understand women. They're not understandable. Guess what? This here, meaning with understanding. A godly husband undertakes the importance of understanding his wife by knowing her well. Every aspect about her, a husband should know about his wife. There should be no secrets. He is able to demonstrate his love for her far more effectively when he has this understanding. God directs him to use that to dwell with her, which means live with her in unity, no arguing, not argumentative, knowing she is submitting to his authority. So why should he be anything but loving? Usually what happens is a two-way street. When the submissiveness is not there, the lovingness is not in return. Because it goes like this. Well, you're always fighting me. Every time I say go right, you say go left. We can never agree on anything. Just as it says for the woman, it's not a response to a reward for her submissiveness. The husband's loving to his wife is not a response to her being submissive to him. So it doesn't say do all of this if she is submissive to you and if she's following God and if she does everything you say. It doesn't say that. It just says what I'm supposed to do as a husband. I'm supposed to love her. One, as I love myself. One, I'm supposed to understand her. Everything about my wife I'm supposed to understand. Even the things that I know would upset her, to get ahead of that, to bring peace into the home. How many husbands truly understand their wives? To live in such a loving way. Or do we take the fact that we're the husband and our word is the final word and that's it? No, Peter is telling us to dwell with them. And you can't dwell with somebody, you can't live with somebody if you don't understand them. As the weaker partner. It's got as the weaker vessel in King James. Before you get all bent out of shape, did I know, what's her name, Steffi Graf, did the, or whatever that Graf lady is, she did the, that competition where they hang and spin and do all that, just as strong as any man. Generally, and this is talking physically, women are weaker than men, generally. Yet you do have your power lifters out there that are women who can sling some weight, but generally they're weaker. Make no mistake about it, God is not saying women are weaker spirituality, equality, or any other aspect. He's not saying women are weaker. He's only saying generally because we should be caring for you of who you are as a woman, of your weaker nature, not able to really protect and defend, because it just wasn't for women to protect and defend. Yeah, you had your outliers where women were soldiers and all that, even today they're soldiers. But in general speaking, the world has taken this to say women are weaker. Spiritually, physically, mentally. They can't do what I can do as a man. They can't hold the jobs I can hold as a man. They can't hold up under pressure. They can't do any of this. That is not what Peter's saying. Peter's only saying that women are weaker physically. And by that fact, you always want to care for the weak, which is why the church cares for the widows and the orphans. Why? Because they're at a weak point. Any woman who didn't have a husband was really at a weak point. Why? Because she had no one to care for her. That's why the husbands are around. That's why the church is around. Lastly, everybody. Tell me, okay, I got time. I got a few minutes. Lastly, not everybody. Before this, look at the bottom. It says, weaker partner, and as heirs with you, so together, husband and wife, we're one. There's no way that I can share in the kingdom without my wife. Because we were one. God said we're one. You don't divide one. It's not a team. Of the gracious gift of life, so that nothing will hinder your prayers. That's a unique part. Because men, think about this. We are the head of the household. So not just the women, but we are the one that's lifting our prayers up to God on what we want. But if we don't live this out as men and love our wives as we love ourselves, without retribution, without chastising, without jumping down their throats at every little thing, because if we do, guess what's going to happen? Any prayer we get may be hindered going to God. And if there's any man in here who wants his prayers to be hindered going to God, he's sitting in the wrong house this morning. He should be in another house. Because I guarantee you, if any man in here prays, what does he want happen? He wants his prayer to hit the throne of God immediately. But if we're not living out our lives as men and loving and caring for our wives, over their submissiveness, not lording it over, not taking it for advantage, not being like I'm better than you, if we're doing the right things as husbands, then our prayers will never be hindered when they go to God. And if we're not, and if you know a husband is not, his prayers are hindered, if they reach the Lord at all. Why? Because his face is probably now turned against him, because he's not living out his life as a godly man. And it's his choice, not God's, to do that. It's his choice to say, I'm going to abuse my wife because she's submissive to me. Because some men take that as a power-hungry, authoritative thing when their wife becomes submissive to them. And they feel that everything they say is like a master to a slave. Go do this. Go bring me this. Go do that. Not without love and care. Anything I'll ask my wife to go get for me, I would get for myself, and I would get for her also. In the mornings, when it's cold, I'll go out and start a car up. I'll just go outside, I'll start it up. I'll come back inside, I'll wait. Whenever they leave, I'm watching. Think about that. Whenever they leave the house, I'm watching them as she goes to her car. Even when she's upset at me and we're upset at each other, she don't know it, but I'm still watching. There's times she would come home and wouldn't see me. I'm hiding somewhere around the house because I'm watching her. For security. So nobody grabs her when she goes to the car. I'll go start up the car. Then I would go out to the car with her when she walked out to the car, and I'll look in the back, make sure nobody sneaked in the car while, you know what I'm saying? But I would do this for myself. I iron every morning. When I come home from work, I iron. I'm the ironer of the house, so go ahead, call me henpeck now. Okay? I iron in the house. Why wouldn't I iron? In the military, I ironed my own clothes. Kept a striped uniform. So now that I've got a wife, why would I stop doing that? And guess who I iron for? I iron for the whole house. Every day. I iron for her. I iron for Malaya. And when Devin was living home, I ironed for him every single day. And guess how I iron? When I get off work, I iron my clothes. I don't do anything until I iron my clothes for the next day. And I set them out for the next day. As soon as I get home. Their clothes are not even out yet. One would suggest that if I'm ironing every day at 5 o'clock and you wanted me to iron your clothes, where would you have them at 5 o'clock? You'd have them out on the ironing board. They don't. They put theirs out sometime in the middle of the night. I'll wake up and they're there. I may have to tell Malaya, go get your clothes. When Devin's out, tell Devin, go get your clothes, put them out. So then what I do, when I get up in the morning, I do a little workout, exercise, and then I'll do what? I'll go upstairs and I'll iron her clothes. Even if they're not out when I'm ironing. Why? Because I love her. I love my family. I don't have to have anyone's approval to do the things that I do for my family. I've already got God's approval. He's already told me how to live my life with my family. He's already told me how to love and care for them. So it's those small things that I don't mind doing because I'll do them for myself. When it comes time to cook, yeah, I'll cook. Why? Because I'll cook for myself. Now, if I won't do it for myself, like if she goes, hey, jump off this bridge for me. Well, I don't think I'll do that for myself. So I don't think I'm by rights, by God, I can do it for you. Because I wouldn't do it for myself. But everything that I would do for me, I'll do for her. And it doesn't say I've got to do it because she's being submissive to me. Even if she would be the most rebellious woman on the face of the earth, as a husband, that's what we have to do. No matter what. It's not a reward for our wives being submissive that we love them. It's God's command. It's now we are one. All right, last while I close here. Finally, all of you, this is for everyone. All of you be like-minded, be sympathetic, love one another, be compassionate and humble. All right, think about that. All of us being like-minded. Be one mind. Again, most of us are willing to be one mind as long as what? As long as it's my mind. Y'all one mind as long as it's what I think. We're cool. But as what anybody else thinks, we're not. So if we're all to be like-minded, whose mind are we supposed to be like? Virgil's? He's young and in school. He does a lot of crazy stuff, so we can't be like him. Tim? He's a biker. We can't be like a biker. Nelson's retired. We can't be like him. His mind is laxy-daisy now. It doesn't even get up in the morning at a set time. So whose mind are we supposed to be like? If it ain't my mind, whose is it? Is it y'all's mind? We got to be like one. So let's choose which one of us will be like. We leave out of here today, we all are like that one mind. Randy, we'll be like Randy. One mind, just like Randy. We're all going to be one big Randy as we walk out of this door. All right? At least we'll know how to do some of this electrical work we got around here. That's not a bad mind to be like, all right? We're supposed to be like Christ. One mind, just like Christ. As a church. And if we're one mind like a church, then wives are being submissive, husbands are being loving, and we are being a church just like Christ. Going out serving everybody. Not being argumentative, but serving. Not returning evil for evil. The greatest challenge to love comes as loving someone who doesn't love you. It's easy for me to love Nelson. Easy for me to love Mion. Easy for me to love John. Easy. Why? They love in return. Husbands and wife, easy to love. Why? They love in return. What about the person at work who you've already said you hate? The one you can't get along with? What about the person you see in the neighborhood who you already said you hate because you can't get along with them in their yard or something? Those are the ones we got to love. That's how we can be of like mind, by loving those and not returning evil for evil. This is all in submission. If we can't submit to this, in my mind, if I was God, I'd be like, if they can't do that, how can they submit to me? It's just me. Even God says if you don't honor the Father you can see, how are you going to honor the Father you don't see? So if you can submit, if you can't submit to the husband you see, what's going to happen when we get to heaven with Christ? We're going to do what? It's going to be a what? A wedding, right? So Christ is the bridegroom right now. So if you can't submit to the husband you see, how are you going to submit to the husband you can't see? Husbands, if we can't love our wives, how are we going to love Christ? If we can't love the one we said is going to bear our children in generations to come, how are we ever going to love Christ? This submission is the most hardest thing we can do as Christians. This is how we live like Christians. Getting into heaven is a cakewalk. Just believe. Romans 9:9-10, believe. John 3:16, we can quote those easily. But how many times have you heard people quoting this about submission? They always say turn to God. How many times have they talked about submission? To husbands. Submission to authority. Submission to God. Nobody wants it. We'd rather protest. We'd rather be the ones who speaking for a voice of change. It says this, that women can't use their voice to change a man. It's only by their godly actions that a man is changed. So what kind of protest is going to change me other than your godly actions? Church, Jesus reminded us that there's no great credit if we love those who love us in return. The real test of love is demonstrated compassion to our enemies. That's the real test of love, is to demonstrate compassion to our enemies. And as a church, if we're not doing that, we're not living out godly lives. We're not following God. I just want to read 1 Corinthians 16:15-18. You know that the household Stephanas were the first converts in Acacia, and they devoted themselves to the service of the Lord's people. I urge you, brothers and sisters, to submit to such people and to everyone who joins in the work and labors as at it. I was glad when Stephanas, Fortunus, and Acacia arrived because they have supplied what was lacking from you. For they refreshed my spirit and yours also. Such men deserve recognition. Do you submit to the people of the church, Pastor Johnny? His authority as the leader of the church. We have to. They were the first converts in Acacia. And he's telling everyone to submit to them. Why? Because of their godly way. But we all fall on that thing that I am my own person. I won't submit to no one. No one tells me what to do. Well, if no one's going to tell me what to do, then by God, God can't tell me what to do. He just can't. Because I'm not used to submitting to anybody. I'm used to going out on my own. This submission starts in the house. It starts with the wives. Have the same mindset as Jesus Christ. Always, church.